Hey there, this is Dr. Pam Perry, live TV, in the flesh live. I just finished watching NABJ's National Convention live interview. NABJ is roughly the National Association of Black Journalists in Chicago, where they were interviewing Trump on stage. Oh my God. It was actually one of the most entertaining things on television I have ever seen. But it is going to be shown again, I'm sure, on CNN, and you will definitely see. But this show is going to talk about PR from a crisis communications, and they had a little bit of a crisis going on at NABJ. They actually had their co-chair of the convention step down. I guess it was a lot of things going on, but one of the main things, she was not really having that or be a part of that. I will say that the three Black women that interviewed Trump did an excellent job. I thought they stayed a little bit too much on what the VP's pick is and all of that. But the lady, Rachel, when she came out, she said, let's address the elephant in the room. And that is exactly what you do when you're a journalist. Fine job, Rachel. So we're going to have our guest come on, Corey Dade, right after this.
Welcome to the Get Out There and Get Known podcast. Join Pam Perry, veteran PR strategist, Emmy award-winning producer and publisher of Speakers Magazine, who will show you how to crack the code in getting out there to get known. Each week, she either interviews her media friends, PR colleagues, or she just goes solo, offering you strategies on publicity, publishing, and platform building. So listen up to hear how to get booked on media places and on superstar stages. Now, here's your host, Pam Perry.
Hey there, this is Pam. So, like I said, we're going to have a guest today. His name is Corey Dade, but I don't really get too much into politics, and I've never done political PR, but today was like an exception because everyone who was Black and in journalism or communications had to be watching that thing with Donald Trump today. And when I tell you, it was one of those shows where, like, what? I mean, just out and out loud. First of all, he said that the woman never even had, that she never had a law degree. I'm like, she didn't pass the bar? Like, what? So anyway, he's just continually lying all the time. But I'm sure it'll replay tonight on CNN, which he called fake news. He said a whole lot of different things. But the main thing is that we're going to have our guest today, Corey, that's going to be joining us shortly as soon as he gets on that right here. So one of the main things I want to tell a little bit about what this show is about. It's about crisis communications. And crisis communications happens when, and I did it years ago when I worked at an agency, is when I worked for McDonald's, and McDonald's will get a call, an alert, a client says, oh, there was a piece of, I don't know, animal rat hair in my food. It's a crisis communication. Or there's a shooting. Obviously, there's things like that. But, typically when clients call you in for a crisis, they want you to mitigate the media because they will jump on it and really become a bigger thing than they would like it to be. So if one of the things that Corey dealt with in terms of crisis communications, Corey worked for the Wall Street Journal. This could be Corey right now. I'm waiting on Corey. So, hey there, Corey, we're waiting on you.
Hey, I'm on, or I thought I'm on, but I'm
no,
not sure.
I sent you the link again. No, you've got to come into the studio. Everybody else can see, but I'm on the phone with you right now. But yeah, I sent you the link. I said, this is your StreamYard link.
Okay, because I thought I clicked on the right link. Let me just double check here.
Yeah, it's a StreamYard link. And basically everyone else is watching on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, but you actually watch the one that I sent. I can send you the link again. And I got
the StreamYard link.
He's coming in now. And this is quite.
Can you continue with YouTube?
No, don't. Well, no, you're going to go into StreamYard. Yeah, just go into StreamYard directly, I guess. Whichever one is easier. This is Crisis Communication 101, guys. So I'm going to bring in like a little commercial right now, and then we'll come right back and talk about Crisis Communication 101.
Are you ready to get noticed? Pam Perry PR's quick media coverage service is here to put you in the spotlight. Just tell us your story, and we'll tell the world. Our team of journalists will craft compelling stories about you, featuring captivating photos and links to your website and social media. Choose 1, 2, or 3 stories and see yourself on high-traffic news sites. Be seen, be in the news. With quick media coverage, your unique and newsworthy story gets the attention it deserves. Visit PamPerryPR.com. That's PamPerryPR.com and get started today.
Okay. All right. So Corey is coming in, and you come in using that link, and you're good. I'm gonna hang up. All right. So he's gonna begin. He's a VP at Ketchum, and technology happens, and that's not. He also worked at NPR. He went to school-wise. He went to Grambling, and he actually played football there, and then he eventually graduated from University of Maryland. But he began his reporting career at the Miami Herald. So he's a print guy, right? There's a old school journalism. I love that. My first career out of college was working with the Detroit Free Press. The Miami Herald and the Detroit Free Press are both Gannett newspapers. So we did a lot of things together. Then he also then went to work for the Detroit Free Press because, again, like I said, the Miami Herald and the Detroit Free Press are both owned by Gannett. Then he went to the Boston Globe, went to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and then he did a stint over at NRP. But what I like that where he is now in terms of PR, a lot of journalists leave journalism and they go into PR just from the standpoint of navigating media and telling stories and that kind of thing, is that he covered some national stories. He covered the BP oil spill. He covered the Tiger Woods scandal, which is probably why he's good in crisis communication. And in 2008, he covered the presidential election, and he traveled with Obama and McCain campaign. And he also covered the Virginia Tech shootings and Hurricane Katrina. So he's when it comes to covering hard news, that is his main thing. Right now, he's having a little trouble getting in because StreamYard is not letting him be great. I'm going to send him the link again. There he is. I'm going to send it. He is here now. So yeah, it's a little bit different. There you go. Excellent.
We did it. We
can tap dance if we have to. We can tap dance.
Oh boy, I'm sorry you had to vamp for a while. You had to fill some time.
No.
Great to be with you.
That is fine. This is Crisis Communications 101. Crisis PR 101. And so, and I always tell people sometimes when the internet doesn't work or the equipment doesn't work, like NABJ, which was so weird today when Trump was on the stage, he was saying, I can't hear, your equipment was bad. I can't understand what you're saying. And I'm thinking, even if it is, you don't attack the people who, it just media relations 101. You don't attack the people and let them know that they were late, letting the audience know that they were late, letting them know that the equipment is late. So it was just those kind of things. But graciously, the people who interviewed the Donald Trump, they did excellent. They did as best they could considering the situation. I thought the audience was the typical audience. There were little hecklers and laughs and just kind of like, oh my God, that kind of thing. But it was all good. But I just thank you for joining us today. So I read a little bit about your background. I saw that you started in print, Miami Herald, went to the Free Press. You did, and I love print people. So print people are real journalists, right? But then you went to work in radio. You went to NPR, and you were Wall Street Journal. So kind of give us the background of why journalism for you, Corey. Why you wanted to be. I mean, you were traveling with Obama and McCain. Virginia Tech, Hurricane. I mean, hard news. So what was the chip in you that said, I want to do this? Were you watching Clark Kent and Superman when you were young, or where did it start?
Well, so I'm from DC, and growing up in DC, that's the center of national politics. And when you grew up in DC, at least when I did, the local news was like what was happening in Congress and in the administration in the White House. So for us, it was completely integrated. We knew there was local news as we know it to be, but our local news fed us big time political news. So I walked in, I grew up in an environment when news was at my fingertips. It was just a way of living and breathing in this town. So I get that kind of in my bloodstream, I guess, from the beginning. But it's at certain points you realize what your talent is. I had an early talent for writing, and I just when I was in college, I was at the University of Maryland, and I joined the student newspaper just to improve my writing skills. I mean, that was it. I had no designs on becoming a journalist, but I got bitten by the bug, and that's it. I only ever wanted to be a journalist, really.
Wow. That is okay, because of good writing skills. So that kind of leads us into where we are a little bit today, talking about AI as well. The crisis communication, we're going to put that on hold right now, put a pin in that. But let's talk about the writing skills. So today, I've been in PR for a long time. If I had AI when I started, like, really? This is crazy. Every when I first got Chat GPT, everything I would say is like, this is crazy. It's crazy. Things that would take me an hour were like 30 seconds. I'm like, this is that's all I would say for the longest. Like, this is crazy. So how does the world melt now with you for AI and PR and those good writing skills? Are they still needed as much as they were before?
I think I'll give you the general thing that to start with, that probably a lot of people already know, which is that with AI, when it comes to writing, it can be a huge help insofar as it makes you more productive, in the sense that it can help you and acting as the first draft for anything you need to write, and it cuts down the time it takes on production, right? Because you don't have to brainstorm as quickly. Some of us start and stop, we stall, we're multitasking. So the first thing it gives you is efficiency and better production. But whatever it produces, the human, with their writing skills and their knowledge of strategic communications, still has to come behind that AI content and fact check it, but also scrutinize it and personalize it. So as we know in PR in particular, a lot of what we write is persuasive writing. The whole point is to move an audience from this point to that point, either behaviorally or in their mindset, right? So in order to do that, one of the things you have to do is personalize that content. Any form letters, anything that looks like it's just filled with facts, but not anything that appeals to the emotions of the audience, that is something that's going to be lacking the human element, which is what is always the first watch out for content generated by AI. I think the second thing is AI is pulling content that comes from other people, other sources, and they don't always cite their sources. So you don't know if you're getting necessarily original content or not. And there are a lot of performers, comedians even, who write jokes, who are challenging AI in court. Litigation has already begun around intellectual property and how it can be protected through AI, whether it's AI being forced to cite their source material or what. But if you are using AI, at this point, the standard practices are A, to fact check everything, of course, but B, to also decide whether or not you share with the intended audience, your boss or clients or whatever, that a portion of what your work product was actually generated by AI. That's becoming more common.
I did not realize that.
Transparency.
So this is a magazine that is on the shelf now. It is so funny that people are being certified in AI. There are AI magazines. There are AI. Who knows? We got all AI, because it is the next big boom of things that are really transforming the world. It's almost
Yeah.
like what the internet did or what Google did, right? It's like when Google first came out, said, well, the kids can't use Google. Well, they're going to use Google. Okay. And the kids are going to use AI because it's just where we are now. This is how it's going to land. But fact checking is important. And I like the fact that what you said, you still have to be a good writer because you need to know good writing in order to understand if Chat GPT or whatever you're using is going to give you good information. So if you don't, it does help you with the production, and also, like you said, the brainstorming, giving that first draft. What I'm finding is that so many people say, well, I don't need a publicist because I can write my own press releases because I've got Chat GPT. And it's like, okay, well, we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
Or I could just tell certain things. It's so robotic. I could just tell certain things are written by Chat GPT, and there's so much
Mhm.
of it now that it's becoming like garbage all across the internet. It's like littering everything. And it's like, oh my God, I could tell that's Chat GPT. It's like, you get an email that says, so, I hope this email finds you well. I'm like, oh my God, like, really? Can you at least give me something different? And I
Personalize it
always,
a little bit. Yeah.
oh my
Yeah.
God. And then they always start with the
Absolutely.
preposition, in the world of, and I'm like, oh my God. And I was like, you know
Yeah.
what, this, when I first got it, I was like, this is great. But then it becomes so robotic. So what publicists do, and what you kind of alluded to a little bit, is that they have to write not just facts, but it's persuasive. And this is the kind of thing that I say between journalists and publicists, is that you're writing a pitch or writing a story to give to a journalist to give them a point of view. Now, obviously, the journalist has to check both, but your job is, you have the client that's like tapping you on the shoulder, said, I want this point across. And then you
Mhm.
also have the journalist, which could be your friend as well. And it's like, hey, I can't really, this is not a sales letter. This is a newspaper. So
Right.
you got to give me both sides. So how do you find that, coming from the background that you did as a print journalist, a broadcast journalist, and now in the PR space, how do you meld the two? Because I know you have journalist friends. They probably said when you left, it says, oh, you're going to the other side,
Going to the dark side. Yeah.
going to the dark side. It's like, but I'm getting paid.
And
Oh,
later they come behind you like, how is it over there?
yeah, right. So how did you make that move in the switch? Because I could tell that
Hmm.
that news was your heart, right? That was the heartbeat.
Absolutely.
You were doing the campaign, you were doing Hurricane Katrina, you were doing the hard news,
Yeah.
not feature
Yeah.
news, not the fluff, but the real news. So how did you make that switch, or who recruited who? Did you raise your hand or did they pull you in?
Well, I think for any journalist who's been, especially journalist who is reporting, like out with sources out in the field, so to speak, and not in the newsroom as an editor or designer. Um, Most journalists, at some point, if they're long enough into their careers, get some kind of opportunity to go to the other side in PR and communications. It often is the other side of your beat. So if you cover crime, for example, and you have good relationships with the police department, they may, because they respect your work, et cetera, suddenly you might get an offer to become a public affairs officer or a press secretary for that police department. Happens all the time.
Yeah,
Um,
it
in my
happened with
case, yeah,
it happened with um
Vicky Thomas,
Vicky Thomas. Yes, Vicky
yes,
Thomas had
she
been
covered the
miss.
city and then she eventually went to work for the city. Happens
Yes, and it's
very
excellent.
often in Detroit. There's a long line
Mhm,
of
mhm.
communication strategists who were plucked out of the newsroom. Yeah, many
Yeah,
of them my
and
friends.
Montez Miller, you probably know her as well. She used to work at BET, and now
Yes.
she works freelance and has her own media production company and that sort of thing. And
Yeah.
her first Aretha Franklin was one of her clients that she
Ah,
did a lot of work for and that sort of
we could
thing.
definitely needed some help.
Yeah. So you
Yeah.
went through and you were plucked from one side.
Yeah, I was, but it was also, it came at a moment in my life where it was the right timing. Um, Usually, more often than not, a journalist makes the jump into communications not of their own volition. It's because maybe their job was cut, because of job cuts and the contraction of the industry, or they just kind of got burned out and they didn't see upward mobility. That's usually the case. In my case, it was kind of a combination of looking around and seeing the industry changing. I was getting close to burnout. I was approaching probably 18 years in the business, and like you said, covering real news, natural disasters, presidential campaigns on the trail, and it's grueling. It really is grueling. And the demands for content had just climbed. So round the clock deadlines, you write a story, you got to go on air and talk about the story. You got to go promote it to another outlet. It's just more to do. You got to push it out on your social channels. So I got to a point where I was just tired. And I had a very, very specific kind of window of topics and issues that I wanted to cover. And by then I covered them. So an offer came along from an old source of mine when I was reporting. He had gone to a PR agency, and this is often how it works. I was at the point where I was willing to entertain other options, because in journalism, often you can have this much experience, but the job you're doing, the assignment you have, the beat, only requires this much of your know-how.
Right.
So you often can't share or contribute to a lot of other coverage that you may have experience in. Not in that moment. You have other people that do that work. So I saw the opportunity because it was unique. They needed someone who had specific expertise about an industry that I used to cover when I was at the Wall Street Journal.
Okay.
So it was a perfect fit in that regard, and it was the right timing. So that's what made me move. And then the other part is it gave me a chance to use more of my brain. So
not the same skill over and over again.
Not the same skill over and over again. So it was when I walked in the door doing PR, and it was at Burson Marsteller in DC. Okay. Basically, every media outlet that I'd worked with became an opportunity for colleagues and clients to get my help with something. Hey, Corey, we have a client who's trying to get coverage in Detroit. We know you used to work there, so can you help us strategize about how to get coverage from the Detroit media?
Yeah.
And then the next day they'd want to tap me to talk about strategy for pitching to somebody at the Wall Street Journal. And so it was a good fit in that way. I was like, wow, from day to day, I'm not just paid for repetitive behavior. I'm paid for how I think. Yeah.
And the connections that you have built over the years, all the relationships from NPR, Free Press News, Miami, you've been at a lot of different places. And I want to say this too, that media people do move around a lot. Probably, I guess anybody in communication.
The nature of the business, really.
Yeah, it is the nature of the business. It's very rare. Now, Vicki Thomas was at WWJ for a very long time, but that's very unusual.
She was unique.
Yeah, she was unique, and she was there like 30 years or something like that. But she didn't do the same thing, because as time went on, she not only had to do radio, but she also had to do like little video, and then she has to put it on a blog, and then she has to. I mean, they got to do the social, and it's a lot that because the industry changes, she changed with it, so she wasn't. She always stayed relevant in terms of that. And so one of the things that I see, was it a culture shock? You think when you I'll just say this, just to be frank, was it a culture shock in terms of the amount of work versus in the amount of pay?
Well, the pay was definitely better.
In the amount of work?
The amount of work, it was different.
Not 24/7.
Well, yeah. So the hours were, in general, a little better. That was an obvious thing. It was one of the earliest things I saw. The pace is slower, but it's not slow. It's just there's no pace faster than a newsroom, especially a daily newsroom.
Oh my God.
But I think that the difference as far as the workload is that it's different in that as a journalist, you are kind of self-directed. you do your piece, and then you hand it off to your producer or your editor. They do their piece, and it's like, a process, almost like an assembly line. And if you're a reporter in particular, you are self-directed, and your goal is to fit a structure that's already set. And you're expected to be as comprehensive as possible, and you're not writing to the delight or limitations or desires of the audience. You're writing to the standard of journalism and news, right? So in the agency world, in strategic comms, that's not the standard. You're writing to the satisfaction of your client and to the point of persuading your client's target audiences. So even if you're an expert wordsmith from your time in journalism, that is not the goal. The goal is to find the best words that the client believes embodies or demonstrates whatever message they're trying to get across. And so that means, as a journalist, you have to shift. You can't just work in a silo and expect everybody to accept your work product. So, which means you have to be more collaborative. You have to be more empathetic of others. And you have to understand that there are many, many ways to write than just the journalism structure. So the work is different. It's not harder or necessarily easier. It's different. So it's like, if you look at writing as a trade, it's really developing new versatility as a writer and being able to listen more to your clients and not just think, oh, I'm a good writer, I'm just going to bang this out the way I know it needs to be done. It's not how it works on this side.
And the same thing, with you being a VP, you're also involved in probably business development as well.
Yes.
So part of that is sales. So now you have another thing that you're adding on to being the writer, being the client, customer service, being in sales. There's just a lot of different hats at this point that you're wearing. And still journalism is still part of what you do, but you have journalist friends, and you can't tick them off by just ramming your clients down their throat when it doesn't fit their beat. So give us, we're almost out of time, and I want to make sure that you say this, because the name of the podcast is Get Out There, Get Known. And one of the main things is people need to know, is like, how do they get out there and get known? And I'll give you a good example. And I did a podcast not too long ago called PR Therapy for PR Girls. Therapy for PR Girls, because sometimes, people think they're more ready than they really are. And they just think that they should be on CNN or sitting on the couch of Tamron Hall, And so give us the skinny, I guess you would say, when someone is really ready for PR. Donald Trump said this, I heard him say that. He said to Rachel, he says, "You all didn't give me any publicity for that." I'm like, they don't give publicity. The media gives coverage. Okay. Like they don't, the journalist is like, I'm going to give you some publicity, anyway. It's just like, he does not understand, I guess, because he always bought news. He didn't know that he was paying for publicity, even though he thought it was news. But anyway, give us a little bit of background of the skinny of what it is that a journalist, say the Wall Street Journal where you were at, or the Free Press, or depending on the beat, what they were looking for.
I think it's important to understand, if you're a communications professional, it's important to understand how people on the beat, these reporters, approach their roles and how they set up coverage boundaries. It's not as clean as people think. If someone covers healthcare, that doesn't mean they cover everything in healthcare. So just because you see a healthcare reporter doesn't mean you pitch them. Healthcare is a huge industry, as we all know. You have reporters who cover sort of managed care programs and health insurance. Then you have people who cover the medical innovation side. Then you have people who cover pharma. Then you have people who cover health policy, health equity, all these different topics. And sometimes never the twain shall meet for the reporting beat. So it's important for us as communication strategists to understand how reporters design their beat and what their parameters are for coverage. For example, the Wall Street Journal, they cover business, yes, but they really primarily cover publicly traded companies.
Yes.
Which means if you're a privately held company, you're gonna have a higher bar to reach to get into the Wall Street Journal.
Mm-hmm.
So some of this stuff you only know if you are a former journalist, which is why
you
read the paper. Journalist is always needed.
Yeah,
always.
And always, you only know this if you read it. I always tell people, I said, if you want to be in the news, study the news.
Most people are not news conversant, even in PR. Media pitching has become the discipline or the capability that a lot of people in PR don't want to do because it's hard.
It is. It takes some research.
Right. And it takes relationship building
and thought.
And with people in the newsroom. And, a lot of people don't want to wait around for that. But what we know is clients consistently keep coming back to us to either get in the news or stay out of the news.
That part. That's the crisis communication part.
Yeah.
Like how do you navigate that? I'm gonna have to have you come back and talk about crisis communication because that's a whole nother conversation by itself. That part in politics and things like that, crisis communication is always that you covered the BP oil spill. Mm-hmm. That was a big crisis communication thing that they were dealing with. I think I just watched a DuPont movie too not too long ago, and that was a big one as well. But the main thing is that knowing the beat that the reporter is covering, what they're doing in terms of print, what they cover on the broadcast, and just knowing I guess you would say that the hierarchy. You don't pitch the publisher. You may not necessarily pitch the editor. Maybe you pitch the beat reporter. But you have to know a little bit about the news. And that's why
and also know about the news organization itself.
Yes.
Understand who reads their content or who watches their programming. Know that, which requires you doing a little digging and understanding data and analytics. You want to be able to bring your client exactly the right, not just the right reporter, but the right outlet, because that outlet is read by their target audiences. If you cannot say that with confidence, then you may be misaligned with what your client's goals are.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, what you just said, that you want to make sure that your target audience is a match to that outlet. And that's many people want to just say, I want to be on whatever the most popular. Maybe it's People Magazine, okay? But your audience is not in People Magazine. Yes, a bragging right that you were in People Magazine, but if they're not reading that, then why do you want to be in it? So we always go back to PR is a part of marketing. And so it's part of the whole overall marketing strategy. So you want to make sure that your PR matches your marketing strategy. And it's not a fame builder, even though I think it does give people a bit of an ego once they get some press. But that's not what we're here for. PR people aren't here to stroke your ego. It's not that. So yeah, that's why I did that podcast, like Therapy for PR Girls, because sometimes it does. It does. It's like, you know what? Why do you want to be on the billboard? Who's going to see it? Like, really? Who's going to see it? You and Snap, Crackle, and Pop. Like, is that part of your strategy overall? So yeah. But I've just really just enjoyed talking to you. I have people to connect with you on LinkedIn in the show notes below so that they can connect with you there. But in terms of what we can support you with, what is it that you're working on? Are you working on a book? I know you said you have a talent with writing. Are you one day wanted to like write a screenplay? Are you trying to work on a novel? What do we got going on with Corey?
I don't have any writing projects right now. I have had, a million different book ideas. So nothing like that right now. I think what I'm just focused on is finding new ways to sort of elevate my capabilities in this space. You mentioned AI. We talked about that briefly. Trying to get as smart with AI as possible so that I can use it and counsel my clients.
Yes, this right here. It says the next industrial revolution. That's what it says. Artificial. What did you do? can't do the
That's
rest of
not
the
an
voice.
understatement.
You
That is
gotta
not an understatement.
yeah, because if you don't, it'll just roll over you. I think a lot of people are trying to really get into it because they realize that they've missed a whole lot of waves of certain things, and it's like, I'm not gonna miss this wave. So it's like, no, you need to
You
get in
can't
it.
miss
And a lot of journalists, because the NABJ conference is going on, a lot of the journalists are looking at the shrinking newsrooms, and they're looking for other opportunities of things that they can do and use their skills. And
it. Yes.
PR is one area of it. When I went to Wayne State, I went to Wayne State University. I was in a journalism school, but my major was in PR and advertising. So under
Mhm.
journalism, there was PR and advertising, and that was my major within. Obviously, I took like feature writing and things like that, but PR and advertising was under there. So when I left, I went to go work for the Free Press and worked in advertising. So they all
Yeah.
kind of meld. It
Mhm.
wasn't until like later that I really kind of found like my way in terms of what you like the most. And and I will say this, that when people are in journalism, when they're just starting out, and I tell this on every show, that people who go into journalism, they do it because they love it and like it, and they don't do it for the money, because the money is not really so much at the beginning, because
No.
so many people want to be in it because they think it's glamorous. And so
Yes.
because there's a glutton of people that want to get in it, the industry doesn't have to pay them a lot. I remember, I think it was Ken Lemon. He said that his first job when he got out of school was $12,000 a year after he got out of college as a journalist.
Mhm.
He said that was he had to take a peanut butter and jelly sandwich to work every day. He said in order to just make
Yeah.
it work, but he's in it now. I think he's like he's at in the executive level in NABJ now, and he does really, really
Yes.
well, but he's in it because he loves it. So I always tell people, have a lot of respect for the journalists. Don't just, you know, act like they're supposed to be there for you doing the things because you want a story told. They're doing it because they love it, and they're storytellers first and foremost. So find a good story. Pitch them a good story. That's basic. But one of the main things is that you got to read good stories to know what are good stories.
Yes. And most of us are not regular consumers of news. That's
Yes.
a problem. That means if you're not a regular consumer of news, that means either whether you're on the PR side or the journalism side, that means your head cannot quickly and easily spin up a news narrative, which is
Mhm.
absolutely essential.
Yeah.
You need to be able to spot a story and be able to almost involuntarily feel a narrative starting in your head. That's how you determine a story exists. And the only
That's
way
it.
you create that narrative is by reading, and it creates a narrative. We do this with music. When we hear a certain beat, we hear a certain tune, it conjures memories in our head of prior music.
Yeah,
So
it
we
does.
know if we're listening to soul, we know if we're listening to Motown, we know if we're listening to different types of music because it's already been programmed because we've taken so much of it in the past. Same with news. You can't get conversant in storytelling unless you have consumed a regular diet of stories.
Yeah.
It's just how it
That,
works.
that's it. One quick question. I didn't know when you were at the Wall Street Journal exactly, but I was wondering if you knew Angelo Henderson. He's a good friend of mine.
Oh my God. Of course.
Yes.
So Angelo is one of my mentors.
Oh
That's
my
his,
God. Are you serious? So Grant is one of my mentees, so that's his son.
that's
And
my
Felicia's
boy.
a good friend as well. But yeah, I just had
Yeah.
to go there because Angelo, remember when he came to the Detroit News many years ago as a intern, and we have been friends ever since. And then I just so miss him still. It's just so unreal that he's gone and not with us. But his son is really taking on his legacy, and
I mean,
he's
it's
doing. He
been
would be so
wonderful to
proud of
see
him.
Grant, kind of mature and grow. And also shout out to Felicia, his mother. But yeah,
Yes.
Angelo was unique. Angelo, if
Pulitzer
I
Prize
remember
winning
right,
journalist. Hmm.
yeah, if I remember right, he was the first
African
Wall
American.
Street Journal reporter to win a Pulitzer Prize who did not graduate from an Ivy League school.
Wow. I read
Um,
that.
I don't believe he was the first Black journalist at the Wall Street Journal to win a Pulitzer, because I think they had some in the past who were on Pulitzer Prize winning teams. But I believe
Okay.
he's the first Black journalist at the Wall Street Journal to win a solo award,
Yes, yes. It
which he
was a
won
big deal.
for feature writing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was
He
still,
broke the mold with him. He was he was an original,
he was.
singular talent, a singular personality.
And a minister as well. Did all the things.
Yeah.
We used to do a Facebook Friday every Friday. I miss him, and we would do these things about technology, and he would always act like, I don't understand blogging. I'm like, Angelo, come on now. It's just writing. It's like he would just be hilarious. But
Yeah.
yeah, he was one of the ones that for NABJ that he ran it for many years as well. And we did collaborative things together. I ran an organization called BART, Blacks in Advertising, Radio and Television, and Angelo was always there for the people. He in Detroit, he was doing the things around the community, just all around, like Mr. Angelo. You would know that if he's going to show up, it's going to be something good. It's going to be happening. So yeah, I had to say that. It's like, did you know Angelo?
He's larger than life, man.
Yes, he was. Well, on that, I'm going to end it for right now. We went a little bit over, but I just wanted to make sure that we get a little bit of your personality as well. If you had a good mentor, he would be so proud of you. He really would.
Oh,
He
thank
really
you.
would, because that
Thank
is
you,
that is
Pam.
one of the things. Because listen, Ketchum's been around since 1923. I'm sure they have some stories, and you're a VP. That right there gets a gold star, right? Okay, so
yeah, coming up on 100 years.
I know, right? Like
Yeah,
that's a big deal. That's a big deal. So thank you so much, Corey, for joining us today. I have people make sure that they see you on LinkedIn, Corey Dade. Thank you so much for joining us today on Get Out There, Get Known. All right, take care.
You're
I'll
welcome.
talk to you
Good
soon.
to see you, Pam. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Get Out There and Get Known podcast, brought to you by PamPerryPR.com, where you'll get insider tips on how to build your platform, pitch the media, and promote yourself with confidence. Head over to PamPerryPR.com and get the exclusive video training on the 7 must-have marketing materials you need before you pitch in order to be considered in media places or superstar stages.